Hi, Shannon. How are you?
Hi, who am I talking to?
This is Jess Capcar with BBB.
How are you doing today?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Wonderful.
Hanging in there?
I am. Every day, looking for a better pen. Every day is a new challenge.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, that used to be true, and now it's just like it's true on steroids or something.
yeah, exactly, right? I know.
Like something happens, you're like, oh, that's interesting. I didn't plan for
Yeah.
that.
That's a new one. Never done that before.
For lately is not oh no, and getting down and out because, I have my 24 to 48 hours of that when we first headed into this. Now it's okay, what does this make possible?
Hmm.
You know,
Absolutely, right?
a
Right.
much more life-giving question. So,
There you go. Well, thanks again for being here. I think we are live with our attendees, so maybe we'll just say hello to everybody and wait another minute or so, and then I'll just kick things off if that's okay, and we can launch right into it. Be mindful of everybody's time. And my
that sounds
apologies if anybody hears some feedback in the background. I have two little ones running around the house that we're trying to keep quiet. So
okay.
doesn't always work, but we're trying our best.
Sounds great. Can you all see my screen? Have they shared that yet?
We can see you. I don't think we can see your screen yet, but Anna's on here and she's gonna. I'm sorry, I can't do the presentation, but Anna's gonna help with that.
I see it now.
Um, yeah,
Yeah.
great. Okay, and we'll just maybe go ahead and get started again. Just be mindful of everybody's time. I know it's a weird time for everyone. Our whole staff is working remotely at this point in time, but I wanted to let everybody know. Well, first of all, I wanted to welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us this morning. My name is Jessica Capcar. I'm the communications manager with BBB, serving Central Ohio. And I know that it's been a weird couple of weeks for everyone. So we wanted to make sure that we are providing as much information and as many resources as possible. I want to thank Shannon Lee for being here with us this morning. She's going to be a great resource for everyone, I think, as a leader and, as a servant leader. So I will introduce Shannon in just a minute. I do want to let you know that we are recording this webinar, so it will be available afterwards to rewatch, and we will send it out to everybody who is participating today. And it will also be able to be found on our new resource. It's called trustlocal.org. It's a mobile app and it's a website that allows you to go to one place and find information for businesses, for consumers. There's a survey on there for you to be able to fill out as a business or a consumer to let us know kind of what your pinch points are, what some of the needs you have are, and it will allow us to better tailor our outreach and efforts to make sure that the Columbus community and our 21 counties in Central Ohio have what they need in this kind of new uncharted territory. So I just wanted to say thank you again to Shannon, and I will let you take over. Shannon is the Executive Director of Relay Columbus, and if you'd like to expand on that, that's great.
Sure. Thanks so much for having me. I'm honored to be here, humbled, and excited. People, when they meet me and they hear me talk about what I get to do and our organization, they say, "You're not excited, are you?" I'm like, "Actually, I'm very excited." And yes, even now, even in this difficult time, I was just sharing with the folks at the BBB that yes, we are at least in my lifetime, I've never experienced this before. Very, very challenging, and not trying to silver line the situation, right? We want to acknowledge that this is difficult, and really feel that. And then how can we do that and then pivot our thinking? And I can think of not a better time in history for us to really, the way I'm going to talk about it today is monitor or manage our mindset, to really manage our thinking. I don't know if any of you have experienced this yet, but in this really stressful time, you really are seeing how different people manage and navigate anxiety and navigate fear. And we all have various responses. And so a lot of what I'm going to talk about today is going to help us with that environment. So as previously stated, my name is Shannon Lee, and I'm the Executive Director of Relay. I've been in this position since the middle of 2016, with the organization since the beginning of 2014. And I'll tell you a little bit about that organization in a moment. I'm also an author. I just published a book called Servant Leader Mindset. So it's a little less about the mechanics of doing servant leadership and a little bit more about the being of servant leadership. Who am I while I'm leading is, to me, much more important than what I'm doing and how I'm doing it. How I'm doing it is important, but who I am while I'm doing it, that's what servant leader mindset is all about. And then I also do some speaking here and there around the community and kind of regionally. Born and raised Buckeye, went to the Ohio State University. I can't hear you guys, but I want to hear, hopefully, if you're wherever you are, I'm going to give you an OH, and I want to hear you say, I'm going to pretend I
I'll give you an IO. There you go. I speak for everyone.
Born and raised, always lived here. I have visited, someone did one of those things on Facebook where they say, say how many states you've been to, and I didn't repost it, but I was looking at all the states I've actually visited, not flown through, but literally visited. I visited half of the states, 25 states. So now this is now creating my bucket list of, I want to hit the other 25. So a brief thing about me, my husband and I live in Lewis Center. We have 3 adult children. They don't live with us anymore. We miss them, and we are so excited that they are launching into their own lives, and we are enjoying empty nesterhood, if that's a word. And we are new parents to 2 puppies. We got them when they were 8 weeks old, and they are now 22 weeks old. They are 2 little Shih Tzus, and they are just crazy ton of fun. So that's a little bit about me. Relay, we're a professional development organization, and we're really trying to awaken the best in people. And the reason why I love that phrase, awaken the best, is it's this call out that you're not broken. As a leader, there's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with you, with your identity. Awakening has to do with, you already have the answers that you need as a leader, as a person. It's just sometimes we need help waking up to who we want to be and how we want to live in our lives as far as leaders, or in any role that we have in our life. We might be a leader at work and at home, where we might label ourselves something else. We might label ourselves a mother or a wife, a sister, a friend. Our best self is just waiting to be awakened to, and this is a lifelong journey. The way we do this is we offer transformational workshops, assessments, coaching, and we work with employers, both their teams and individuals, to help them implement these solutions to make sure that they hire the right people, that they're embracing a servant leader mindset, if I can use my own title, that they are doing this in a way that they are paying attention to who they are as they're leading. But then a lot of our workshops also focus on the strategies of leadership, like management models, performance management models, coaching models, so that you learn how to move from being a boss to a coach, for example. So while we focus heavily on mindset, and a lot of today is going to be about that, we also offer programming that helps you with the mechanics of actually leading people, the strategy and the tactics of leading people. And all of this is inspired by the timeless principles of servant leadership. I want to make sure that our audience knows this other point about Relay, and that is that we have this program called the Relay Neighborhood Leadership Initiative. Everything that we do, we are a nonprofit, and so everything that we do funding-wise comes from, our funding comes from kind of 3 big buckets. We have individual donors, we have the corporate sponsorships, grant making, all of that kind of stuff. And then we have our social enterprise, all of that training, those workshops, the coaching that we provide as a fee for service, that's our social enterprise. The output of that into the community, the impact of that, is we then take a percentage of those fees and we provided those same services to the rest of the nonprofit community on a free and sliding scale. And that's called the Relay Neighborhood Leadership Initiative. And last year we gave away over $55,000 of services. Those are real dollars. That's stuff that we would have charged for that we didn't charge for. And so if you're ever interested in learning more about the nonprofits that we're working with and helping, just let me know. I'm happy to send you references. I guess I wanted to talk about that today briefly, just so that you understand, as a nonprofit, we're not just out there providing fee for service. There's a method to our madness. We're super passionate about providing best practices to the nonprofit community. Why? The nonprofit community, because of limited resources, spends just $29 a year per person on leadership development. And as you can imagine, if any of you on this webinar have provided professional development for your people anytime lately, you know that $29 per person per year probably doesn't go very far. And so we're trying to remove some of that barrier for nonprofits to get the same high quality, best practice training, workshops, coaching as the for-profit community. And I mentioned, I'm not going to go into this in depth, but you'll notice that mindset is half of that arc. That's because we focus heavily on mindset, but we also have workshops that focus on strategy, tactics, and of course, accountability. And so we run the gamut of all the best practices in leadership development. It's just our sweet spot is in that mindset. So let's get down to business. I'm curious, I do want to mention this. If you look in your GoToWebinar control panel, you'll notice that there are a couple places where we can interact. One of them is the questions pane, and there's a little arrow pointing to the right. If you click that, it will expand that. You can put your questions there, and you don't need to wait till I pause and say, okay, we're taking questions now. Just start populating that as you have questions. And when we do pause, then we'll already have them ready to go. And yes, I will take time to answer questions throughout the presentation. And then you can also chat with the chat box if you'd like. So you can put questions in either of those, but technically the questions go in the question pane. I am curious, and I'm going to wait for your responses. Please go ahead and put them in the chat. I'd like to know how many of you are wearing pants or pajamas right now. Pants means not pajamas. Anything that's not pajamas. If you're wearing just underwear, I don't need to know that. I'm just saying, like, are you in your pajamas? Like, I have on jeans, okay, I have on jeans, but I've heard that people are going to their Zooms and webinars where they're on camera and they're wearing, they're kind of like business on the top and party on the bottom. And so I'm just curious, for those of you that are on the webinar, and I'm going to check back in a little bit, how many of you are wearing pants versus pajamas? And so, and yes, ladies, leggings are pants. I don't care what anyone says, especially now, okay? All right, so leading through crisis, managing your hula hoop. What in the world do I mean by your hula hoop? So this is an excerpt from one of our our flagship training program called Care to Lead. So I'm just showing you the model here. I'm not going to go into this. Care to Lead is an acronym, CARE, for Connect, Align, Release, Engage. And in the introductory portion of Care to Lead, we set up this leadership model that we call our CARE model, with this mindset piece. And that's where this hula hoop comes from. So if you're interested in the bigger picture of where this hula hoop idea fits within this program, just let the folks at the BBB know and they can put you in touch with me. So this is the hula hoop. I know you're impressed. It's really fancy. So the reason why I call it a hula hoop, it's not very interesting. Hula hoops are actually, you put them around your body, and if you were to look at them straight on, it wouldn't be very interesting on a webinar. So we're actually looking down at the hula hoop. And our hula hoop, and I want to make sure, yeah. So our hula hoop is made up, if this is, think of you in the middle of this hula hoop, okay? Put yourself right here in the middle. Just getting my phone here so I can check time. In your hula hoop, your life, what swirls around you are the events of your life, the thoughts that you have about those events. The thoughts that you have create the feelings that you have. Your feelings largely impact and influence your actions, and your actions give you your results. And guess what? your results create a new set of events. So that's why we call it, it's like a complete circle. And for some of us, if we are managing our mindset well, this is a virtuous cycle, right? Doesn't that feel positive? A virtuous cycle. If we are not as well versed in managing this process, and this process goes on for each and every one of us, then it can feel like what we would call, a vicious cycle. Vicious is right? It doesn't feel good. The connotation in a vicious cycle is that something negative is going around and around and around. Have you ever caught yourself in a position where you're like, I feel like this always happens to me. I feel like I'm always experiencing this emotion. Or why do I always put my foot in my mouth? You are in the midst of your hula hoop, and when you're experiencing it negatively, you're experiencing the vicious cycle of the hula hoop. I'm here to tell you that you have a lot more control over this hula hoop than you may realize today. I want to talk about events first. So I want you to think about events in two categories in your life right now, okay? So you have the events that you cannot control that happen to you. And I'm talking about the very basic events of your life, like what color your skin is. You had no control over that. When you were born, no control. What kind of family you were born into, how you were raised, how you were treated as a child, if you've been truly a victim of something, so many things that we are not in control of, okay? Then there's the events that we create in our lives through our actions, our decisions, etc. I want to pause, I'll put a little paper clip in this for just a second, and I want to make sure I mention that while I believe this is true for every person, not every person has equal access to the experiences and their events that give them a frame of reference for choosing their thoughts differently until they really teach themselves and really dig into this process. So for some of us, this is going to be more natural to change the way we're thinking about things to get results, and other people not. And that's due to plain old fashioned privilege. Some of us, and I'm going to include myself, whether it be because of where we were born, our socioeconomic status, the color of our skin, there are a lot of things that impact these things. That my ability to move out of a vicious cycle into a virtual cycle might be a little easier, or might be easier to envision for myself because of where I was raised and the experiences that I had. I believe the truth of this is available to everybody, but I don't think it's as easy for some people as it is for others. And I think it's important for us to recognize that, because we're going to talk about in a minute that sometimes, a lot of times, our hula hoops collide. That's important. All right, you're responsible for everything in your hula hoop. You're responsible for your thoughts, your feelings, what you do, and the results that you get. Until you take this level of radical responsibility, you cannot bring about change. There's a book called The 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership. I'm going to show it to you. It's right here on my desk. I have my favorite, most important books on my desk at all times. And I think I'm still on video. Ladies, let me know if I'm not. But this, the 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership. The first commitment is a radical responsibility. Radical responsibility. I'm not going to go into it, but let me say this. The book admonishes that you do not move on to commitments 2 through 15 until you embrace the first two. The first one being radical responsibility, and the second one, I believe, being self-awareness. So even just the concepts in radical responsibility will challenge you. And if you read that, you'll know what I fully mean when I say you are responsible for everything in this hula hoop. We just don't have time in an hour to go into that. Okay. Now, for both of those kinds of events, the ones you created and the ones that happened to you that you had no say in, you have thoughts about those events. So let's bring it home. We're all having thoughts about what's happening in our businesses and our teams as a result of COVID-19, as a result of this stay-at-home order, as a result of, no doubt with this many people on the webinar, some of you are losing business. Some of you are, maybe someone has lost their job, or maybe you've had to lay someone off, or multiple people off. Regardless of what that event is to you right now, what this specific scenario is looking like for you, you have thoughts about that. And the big picture I want you to understand is the thoughts that you're having about what's going on right now are heavily influenced by your upbringing, your programming, and just your history, your default for dealing with crisis, anxiety, fear, stress. Other people are experiencing this same event. So if you have two people, two leaders, and they both had to lay off individuals, one may be experiencing that differently than another because they've had a whole other way that they've dealt with anxiety and stress. And yet the event is the same. So we are heavily influenced by our programming. That's what creates these thoughts. We decide what something means, and then we have a thought about it. And I'm going to give an example of this whole process with a really kind of obtuse, silly example, but you can apply it to something much bigger and more serious. When we have a thought about something, those thoughts create our feelings. And what I mean by that is we can have very limiting thoughts. We can have negative thoughts. And those limited thoughts and negative thoughts, bad thoughts, if you will, they will create damaging feelings. The reason why I say damaging and not bad is because I believe the human experience is made up of both good and bad feelings, and all of that is normal. For example, when my grandmother died, I felt bad, right? I'm not a monster. Of course I feel bad. And feeling bad about a death, feeling bad about the fact that you had to lay someone off last week, or that you're going to have to lay people off next week, or that furloughing or cutting salaries or whatever, you should feel bad about that, right? This is not about silver lining bad experiences, okay? Those feelings are damaging, however, when they move into things like guilt, shame, resentment, conflict with other people, things that damage self and damage others. That's when feelings kind of cross over and a line that we don't want, and we manage that by managing our thoughts. So those thoughts are creating the feelings. You have good and bad feelings. The feelings that create the vicious cycle, though, are the damaging feelings, okay? When a person's having damaging feelings, I bet you can imagine what their actions are. When I'm feeling resentful towards someone, when I'm feeling jealous, when I'm feeling super depressed about a situation, the actions that I take or do not take are totally different than if I am really evaluating those feelings and evaluating my choices and choosing according who I want to be in that situation versus choosing according to how I feel. And then those actions create my results, and those results give me another set of events. So I want to tell you what this looks like as a vicious cycle. As a vicious cycle, and I'm just checking the questions. I don't see any questions popping in there yet, unless they don't show on my end. Do you see them on your end at all, Anna? Any questions?
There are no new questions.
Okay. All righty. So let's look at this as a vicious cycle. The vicious cycle, and I'm going to pick a silly, it's not silly, but I think it's compared to our current situation right now, what's going on with COVID-19, it's a little overly simplistic, but I think it models the vicious cycle. I'm in a meeting and I have been asked by my supervisor, let's say I'm the VP of sales, and I've been asked by the CEO to give a presentation in that meeting. I work really hard, I give my presentation, and I notice the whole time I'm giving my presentation, here is my CEO. I don't know if you all can see me, I'm looking down at my cell phone and I'm typing. I'm not engaged with my sales leader, okay? I give my presentation and the CEO looks up and says, okay, I need you all to move on to the next point on the agenda. I've got to get going. And they leave the room. Boom, event. Now, if I'm in the vicious cycle where I'm not actively managing my thoughts and I'm not challenging my thoughts for truth, then here might be what I'm thinking now. My CEO doesn't care about me. My CEO is not paying attention to me. My CEO gave me all this work to do and doesn't even care, right? I mean, look, it's true. Look how he acted, or she acted. Now, I'm not thinking in that moment about all the times that my father or my mother or a loved one or a teacher ignored me when I was a kid and how I felt like I wasn't heard and how terrible that made me feel. But it is at play. It's in my hula hoop. It's in my operating system. And when that happened as a child, when that happened in my history, I felt small, insignificant, and you know what that created in me? A whole lot of anger, a whole lot of frustration, and now I'm getting resentful. I'm feeling resentful because my CEO just ignored me in a meeting. So I've got this feeling going on, and what do? The next few times I encounter my CEO, I'm dismissive, standoffish, non-communicative, which is not normal for me. It's not normal for our relationship. My CEO, not knowing what's going on and being a very busy person and in their own hula hoop, decides what my actions mean to them. They decide that I'm disengaging from work, and they were thinking of bringing me in on another project that would have been a promotion for me, but they decided to give it to someone else because they saw that I was not being as engaged in the business. I have a result now. That result gave me a new set of events that I'm looking at. What's the event? I found out that person X over here got a promotion that I thought I was going to get. Guess what thought I have? See, he doesn't like me. He doesn't care about me. I've created a vicious cycle where the things that I think and feel and do are actually reaffirming the original thought that I had. See, we think that we feel a certain way because of the results that we're getting, but that's not actually what happens. We get our results that create new events, and then we have thoughts and feelings that then continue to create those same results. Your results, your actions are created in the thought and feeling part of your hula hoop. Now let's start that over with a virtuous approach. Now I'm the sales leader and I am monitoring my thought process. The same event happens. I'm not going to rehash that. The first thought I have is, I base my thought in truth. Now, maybe my first thought was, gosh, he didn't pay attention to me. That's not very nice. Why would he do that? Why would she do that? Then I'm going to go, wait a second, Shannon. You know what? I have a good relationship with the CEO. We've never had a communication problem in the past. We've always had good rapport. This is not like him or her. I wonder, notice the thought shift moves from an external locus of blame to an internal locus of control. The external locus of blame is initially what he was doing and that it hurt my feelings, basically. Instead, that's interesting. That's not normal for us. I wonder what's going on. So now my thought is not thoughts of anger and frustration. Instead, it's thoughts of curiosity. When I am having these thoughts, how am I feeling? Well, I'm feeling curious. I'm feeling inquisitive. When I'm curious, the actions I take is I ask questions. I might pick up the phone and say, hey, I noticed this happened in the meeting and it's not like you. I put a lot of time into preparing this presentation. And so I'm just really surprised. Is there something you didn't like? Is there a problem? And you know what happened when I did that? The CEO said, I'm so sorry. During the meeting, I just got a text that my grandmother was really, really sick and had been sent to ICU. And I really just wasn't ready to share it with the group, and I needed to excuse myself and I needed to go. And you know what? That was 3 weeks ago, and I totally forgot to circle back with you. I'm so sorry. Let's do this again. That created a whole new result, which gave me a new event, which was an opportunity to represent and et cetera, et cetera. Now, am I saying that every time I change my thoughts, my feelings, and my actions, that I'm going to quote unquote get what I want out of a situation or get a promotion? That's not what I'm saying. But what I can promise you is that when you manage your thoughts and you monitor them for that negativity, like going to what I'll call that dark place, and you refuse to do that and get curious about what's going on, you will feel better. The actions you choose will have a better chance of being in alignment with who you want to be while you're leading. And you will eventually get better results. Now, I want to pause just to make sure that there aren't any questions.
It looks like there is a new one from Misty. She asked what the name of the book was that you recommended.
The 15 commitments of conscious leadership. Can they see this?
I think so.
Okay, I just want to make sure. But that's the name, and this is what it looks like. 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership. Phenomenal book. Our staff development mantra for this year is radical responsibility. That's how seriously we're taking this. Anything else in there for me, Anna?
No, it looks like that's it.
Okay. So how can we change those? So here's the thing, there's no judgment. There's no, like if you're the person that constantly goes to the woe is me, the victim thinking where they don't like me, you know, I don't have any choices, this is all bad, no good. Like we're all wired a certain way. This takes practice. This is like, you know, when I used to go to the gym, I don't anymore because let's face it, well, we can't right now, but when I used to go to the gym, you know, and I picked up that first dumbbell and started doing bicep curls, right? I didn't just do one curl and go, oh, where's my bicep muscle? I don't see it yet. There's still flab here and I have no definition. Screw this. This isn't worth my time, and threw the, you know, weights down and never went back. None of us does that. Well, maybe some people do, but that's not how change happens, right? It's a process. It's a strengthening over time. It's a lifting and lift. And sometimes when we're working out, we get sore and we have to kind of rest a little bit longer than we wanted to, or maybe we injure ourselves in, you know, inadvertently. When we start working on our thinking, we're going to make mistakes. We're going to fall back into old patterns. The key is to become aware of it more and more quickly, so we can go, this is me. I'm like, Shannon, you know how to handle this. You know how to backtrack and go, okay, wait. And my super, I call it my super mega awesome voodoo trick. That's a non-technical term in case you're wondering. But my super mega awesome voodoo trick is anytime I find myself in that negative space in my thinking where I'm having those victim statements. And let's talk about COVID-19. When I first heard about the stay-at-home order and realized how much it was going to impact our events, and I keep looking up beyond the computer because in front of me is my 2020 calendar for the year. And March to June and then September to December are our two really busy times. And so March to June, we're looking at being at home for a big chunk of that time, as far as we know. That was scary. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that my first thought was, oh, well, what's possible and what are the opportunities and what are my, no, that wasn't my first thought. My first thought was, you know, I was like Chicken Little. I envisioned myself in, out on the streets, couldn't pay my mortgage, envisioned myself having to let go staff members and them not being able to pay their mortgage. Like, of course, my brain initially went to that. And I know where that comes from in my upbringing. I know exactly where it comes from. And that's less important to this conversation than it is just to know that I'm like, aha, okay, brain, you've got that old tape going. And if I had stayed in that thought process you better bet that that would have impacted the decisions I made for my organization. Those decisions would not have been what they were. And I'm not saying I've made every decision right. Simply put, the decisions we are making moving forward, I can confidently say they are coming from a place that is not like these damaging feelings. I can say that. In all transparency, the first couple days I was crying, I was scared, super anxious. You know, control is an illusion anyway, but boy, are we feeling how much of an illusion control is right now, aren't we? We all are. And it took me about 48 hours. But you know what? That's progress, because when I first started learning to do this for myself years and years ago, you know, I would be stuck in that vicious cycle for days and weeks, sometimes months. Yeah. And so the fact that I recovered in a couple days, and it's not always a couple days, sometimes it's a couple hours, sometimes it's a couple weeks. But the point is, I have the tool. I know, okay, it's time to pick up that dumbbell again and start working this tool that I have that we call, I just use the hula hoop because it's visual. Okay. So to bring about change, the first thing we have to do is just be aware of every time our thoughts are going to, I'm just calling that bad place. Just be aware. Go, oh, and give it a little wave. I see you. I see you. I see what you're trying to tell me. I see you're taking me to the worst case scenario. I see all of that. And I acknowledge that. I honor it. I'm not trying to resist it. I'm not trying to pretend I don't think that way, that I don't feel that way, because all of those feelings and thoughts are a part of our human experience. To deny it is just futile. I'm not saying we should deny it. What I'm saying is we should challenge it and really get skilled with our self-talk around those challenges. We don't have time today to go into the whole change process. See, what did I put here? I want to talk about Hula Hoops Collide. So the number one tip I can give you for changing those thoughts is to just start to be aware. It seems like too small of a step. What do you mean awareness, Shannon? I got on this webinar for you to give me 5 points so I can change today. I'm sorry, it doesn't happen that fast. The way I started my awareness was this, and you can do it this way if you want, or in any way that works for you. This was back before people did everything on their cell phones. This was, you know, I might be dating myself here, but this is back when we, you know, carried notepads around most of the time. I started becoming aware of when I was having feelings that, oh, look at me, I got fancy. Okay, here's the feelings wheel. And if you like, I can have the BBB send this a PDF of this feelings wheel, or you could just Google it. You can find this on the internet, different versions. I'm not a person who can identify my feelings really well, so it was hard for me. I just knew I felt icky, like this doesn't feel good, but I couldn't really put specific words around it. And the feelings wheel helps me get to, so if you get to the core of how I'm feeling. So if you think of this as the core emotions down here, mad, sad, peaceful, powerful, joyful, scared. Those are the core human emotions. But you'll see the words are a little bit more descriptive as you go out on the wheel. So I found that for me, how I realized I was mad or was I identified with feeling frustrated. Okay. So I saw, oh, I am, if you see here, I definitely feel frustrated with this situation with COVID-19, right? I'm feeling frustrated. And then I also realized that I was feeling bewildered and overwhelmed. Look at that. The core emotion of that is being scared or fearful, right? And so once I got to the core, I was able to go, yeah, I'm angry and I'm scared, or I'm mad and I'm scared. And the reason why it's so important for me to recognize that that is what I'm feeling, and sorry, I'm trying to remove the, oh, there we go, pointer. The reason why it's so important to recognize when you're feeling that way is so that you can be aware. So the awareness activity that I that I did with myself, and I didn't come up with this, I learned it from an executive coach, which is how I got started on all of this, is I wrote down, I noted during the day when I was having those, any one of those core emotions, whether it was sadness, you know, any that I felt was becoming damaging. And so I would write, like, think of it as putting it in columns. I would write in the first column how I was feeling. And it was just, I was feeling frustrated and therefore angry today. The next column is, where do I think that came from? Just making a guess. Well, I think it came from the fact that we just got a stay-at-home order and I started thinking about how it's going to impact our organization. Just really short sentences, whatever is meaningful to you. This is just for you, right? So it doesn't even need to make sense to anybody else. The third column was my challenge column. You know, I challenged, or what am I telling myself? Sorry, the third column is, what am I telling myself about these feelings? So what I was telling myself was, the organization's going to go under. I'm going to have to fire people. We're not going to have enough money, etc. Like all of the things I was telling myself. I wasn't aware in the moment of the emotion that I was telling myself those things. That's why it was important for me at the end of the day to really get clear on what am I saying to myself when I'm feeling that way, because those feelings came from a thought. Remember, those feelings come from thoughts. Go backwards. Okay. They came from these thoughts. So I had to become aware of the thoughts. And so if it were today that I was doing that journal every night, I would say I was thinking about all those things about COVID-19. The organization's going to go under. Like I was totally Chicken Little. I was at the worst case scenario, right? And then my fourth column was, what else could be true about my circumstances, to start to shift a little bit. If you find yourself in a vicious cycle in your thinking, my challenge to you as a first step is just to be aware of what's going on. Now, the last thing I'll say about that part until we go on to when hula hoops collide, checking time, oh good, is this. Some of us, depending on just how we're built, are more aware of where we're more aware that we're in a vicious cycle in different places. And that's kind of confusing. Let me restate that. For some of you, you might be aware that you're in a vicious cycle because you keep doing something over and over again that you're not, I don't know why I can't find the pointer anymore. You keep doing something that you're like, why do I keep doing that? So your awareness is hitting you in that actions part of the hula hoop. Okay. For others, maybe you're aware, I'm more aware in my feelings. So I may not be able to identify the exact feeling. That's where I need my practice. But I know that I'm not feeling right about something. Something feels icky. Something feels damaging. Something feels just like, ugh, just dread, you know? And so I'm more aware there. Some of you might be more aware in your results, meaning, why does this keep happening to me? Why do I keep getting this result? And then others of you might be aware more in your thoughts, like, why is my thinking so negative? And none of those is right or wrong. It just is. What I want you to understand is wherever you're most aware, just like when it hits you that, oh, I'm in a vicious cycle, that's where you want to start your awareness with your writing. So instead of writing your feeling first, you would say, this is what I keep doing. And then your next step would be, you would back it up in the hula hoop. You would say, what was I feeling when I did that? That'd be your next column. And then the next column will be, what was I thinking? The idea is to back it up to the thought, but sometimes we can't get from action back to thought. We have to kind of back up to feeling into thought. So if that didn't make sense or you need me to explain that in a different way, let us know in the questions, okay? That is the best way you can begin to be a better manager of your own mindset, is to be aware of what's going on. That's taking radical responsibility, that you're not anymore blaming external circumstances for how you're feeling and what you're doing, what you're thinking, but that you're taking responsibility and going, okay, where's this coming from? Okay. Now, here's the thing. It is absolutely true that you have a hula hoop and then other people have a hula hoop, right? Because if everyone has one, and furthermore, hopefully you embrace this idea of working on creating a virtuous cycle versus a vicious cycle in managing your thought process, managing your mindset. But you live with and work for, work around people who are not aware that they can take radical responsibility for their hula hoop. And it's not your responsibility to teach them, right? However, they do collide. They do bump into one another. And so what I'd like to say is, when you think about relationships, you can apply the same radical responsibility for your hula hoop, because when yours collides with another's, all it has done is created a new event for you. That's all. And when we're in relationship with people, whether it's an intimate relationship like with a spouse or significant other, or if it's with work relationships, other family relationships, friendships, you are 100% responsible for your 50% of what's going on in between that relationship, right? It's not very nice, and it's not very, and I would hope, especially those of you who are involved in the BBB, who embrace their philosophies on servant leadership and on trust, that I trust that the way you want to show up in the world is not codependently taking responsibility for others' reactions, because I definitely am not a fan of that, but getting honest about the way maybe you have acted and how it has impacted others, and taking responsibility for your part. So if there's a conflict with someone, which is what we're really talking here, you've got that event is now a conflict. And how you think about that conflict is going to dictate how you feel and how you act. Notice in my example with the meeting with myself and my CEO, that's all made up, by the way, although I have had that experience in past jobs, just different roles. Notice that in the virtuous cycle, that had to do with a perceived conflict with another person. Their hula hoop was definitely, bumping up against my hula hoop. And because I chose to take responsibility for my own action, I realized I had choices. And one of the choices I had was to go have a conversation with my CEO. Please know this: when you get clear on how you want to be thinking and feeling about whatever your circumstances are, you have choices of what you do after that. What do I choose as my action? And you can always choose to do nothing, but make sure it's a choice, not a victim thing where you're like, well, there's nothing I can do, or I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place. That's victim talk. And I don't have time to go into it here, but victim talk really comes from a place of anger. It's not coming from a generative place, okay? So when I'm having a conflict with a person, I have to change, or I can choose to change the way I think about it, the way I feel about it, and then I can get clear on identifying the choices I have about dealing with it. One of my choices is I can do nothing. Another choice is to have a conversation. Another choice is to just train myself to think differently about it and kind of adopt the idea of live and let live. That's how he wants to act or how she wants to act, and this is how I'm going to act, and so be it, as long as you feel that way for real and you can really let go. I can choose to, there's several choices that I had in that circumstance, and in the example I gave, I chose to have a conversation with that person. My recommendation is, when you're making those choices, you choose according to who you want to be, not based on how you initially felt when you were upset, scared, angry, whatever. Because that gives yourself the space to choose according to your values. Our values are challenged all the time. People challenge our values. But just because someone is challenging our values doesn't mean that we get to abandon ours. And this process helps you get clear on how you want to think and feel about something, so that you can choose differently when those hula hoops collide. And again, that's just the feelings wheel. So I'm going to pause now and see what other questions might have come up, and to see if there's anything I need to really go back and reiterate, describe again, and I'm happy to answer any questions about this or anything outside of this, maybe about the full program, if anyone is curious about that. Just let me know, Anna.
All right, checking. It looks like there are no new questions.
Why don't we wait about 30, 40 seconds to see if anyone has anything to put in there?
Sounds good.
Oh, here it is.
And I do just want to remind everybody that this is being recorded, so we will send it out to all the attendees. It will also be available to go back to. So, and Shannon, if it's okay with you, we'll provide some contact information for you if they should happen to have any other questions that they think of after we've said goodbye today. But yeah.
Absolutely. And feel free to PDF this PowerPoint and send it out to folks. I know you, I think you guys have it.
Yes.
It,
Yep. That's great. Thank you.
no one may want it. That's fine. We're not trying to get more email going, but if anyone wants it, that's fine.
Yeah, and we'll make sure I think we'll be able to house it on our trustlocal.org site, so people can go there to access it as well. That way, we're not. I know everybody's getting a lot of emails right now since there's less in face-to-face conversations happening. So, yeah, we'll make sure that we put it there as well.
Thank you.
Sure.
And I think if I were to highlight anything from this, it would be these few things. Number one, to remember that most of our reactions are influenced by history. They're influenced by our programming. A lot of that can feel like truth and feel like they are facts, but when we go back and reevaluate, many times they are not. Number two, that we don't need to feel ashamed of that. There's no judgment around that. It just is. It's true for every human being. It's a shared experience. And number three, that as we begin to work on creating a virtuous cycle, to experience that vicious cycle less and less, to be patient. It's a process. It's a simple process, but it's not an easy one. Just like it's just a muscle that we have to build.
Great.
I want to mention to folks that we have lots of ways to engage with Relay. And one of the easiest, and of course free, is our Slapcast. I must have a loop on that one, but the Slapcast, which is our podcast. SLAP is an acronym for our top 4 values of the organization, which is service, love, action, and passion. And we just thought it would be kind of a interesting name for the podcast. And that's found anywhere podcasts are found. And we talk about, I have guests on, and I talk about all kinds of leadership topics, from performance management to mindset to diversity and inclusion. I mean, it's all over the place, and we do our very best to relate it to the business world. But we have a lot of fun with it too. So check us out there. It's a great way to engage with us. And it's released every other week. I think the next one is released next week on the 6th. So that's the timing. And if people want to contact me, this is how they can get a hold of me.
Wonderful. Anna, did we have any other questions come in, or?
Nope, it looks like there are no questions. No new ones, at least.
Okay. Well, Shannon, thank you so much. I want to be, again, mindful of everybody's time. We really appreciate you being here and providing this great information, especially since I think, it's really a time of high emotion and very, intense emotion. So this has been great, and we really appreciate your partnership. As always, I wanted to remind everybody to visit trustlocal.org, which is where we will be housing all of the resources and the PDF that Shannon mentioned, PowerPoint. We will have the link for the webinar available later today, so we will send that to everybody who is with us right now. And if you have any other questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to any of the BBB staff. We are working remotely, but we're available phone, email, and our live chat feature on our website. So if there are no other questions, then I think we'll go ahead and say thank you, and have a great day, everybody, and stay safe out there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.